In today's episode, Brandon and I will be discussing what we put into our post-nuptial agreement. We will have been married for almost 9 years this year, and we decided on a post-nup for our financial portfolio. It made sense after talking to Aaron Thomas, our family law attorney and the founder of prenups.com. And so if this is of interest, we hope you'll stay tuned.
Sugar Daddy Podcast, yo. Learn how to make them pockets grow. Financial freedom's where we go. Smart investments, money flow.
Hey, babe. What are we talking about today?
Today, we are talking about what we put in our prenup.
Yes. Oh, no, our post-nup.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Let's start.
I'll say we've been married for almost 9 years now, so it was kind of a little bit late for a prenup.
Yes. Well, the prenup apparently, we don't know the difference, but apparently is maybe an easier process since you haven't already combined assets. But for us, the process of getting the post-nup was actually extremely easy. It took less than 60 days. The whole family had the flu during the process, but I think had we not had the plague, we could have easily knocked it all out within a month. So it was painless. What did you think?
No, I definitely thought it was painless, and it also helps that Aaron Thomas's process is very thorough, and he's very consultative in regards to how he goes about the process, because obviously a lot of us don't know what a post-nup or a prenup should entail. So they walk you through the process, and there was a lot of things that we didn't even think would be talked about during the post-nup that actually were.
Yeah. Well, and after we had Aaron on our podcast to talk about the benefits of a prenup and a post-nup, we very quickly realized that it's really just about creating your own rules, right? And so every state that you get married in has a prenup already in place. So when you sign that marriage license, you are signing a prenup. And I guarantee you didn't read what it said, because I know we did not read what it said.
No idea what North Carolina's is.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that the rules that we have now come up with in this post-nuptial agreement process are much more in line with what we actually value, what's important to us, than what the state of North Carolina, in our instance, whatever that document says that we signed many, many years ago. So for us, it was really more about understanding the importance, we're designating it as insurance for our love, right? We hope to never actually need it, but now we feel better having it in place. And honestly, part of it was we wanted to help educate our audience about what the prenup and post-nup process is like, what kind of things you can include, what we included. It's all about honest and open conversation for us. And so we wanted to give you some insights into what is actually in our post-nup and why we decided on those things.
Yeah, and if you're a new listener, you haven't listened to other previous episodes that we had Aaron Thomas on a while back, and that completely opened our eyes and changed our viewpoints when it comes to post-nups and prenups.
Yeah, so it's kind of a progression. You can listen to the full episode with Aaron that we did a few years ago. We'll make sure to link it in the show notes. Then we did hey, we're in the middle of the process. Here's what's come up for us. And now that we have a, signed, sealed, and delivered document, so to speak, we wanted to do a follow-up to let you know, high level, what is in our post-nup and why it was important, and some things that we learned along the way that we think would be important for others to know about as well.
And I definitely want to emphasize that, if you're listening to this episode and you're thinking hey, I don't have a lot of assets, me and my wife or husband or whatever, partner are not going to break up, blah, 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 all the head trash that we had before, I highly encourage you to listen to that episode with Aaron Thomas, because like Jess said earlier, you already have a prenup for each state that you live in. There's one already written. So his biggest take was, why not write your own? Also, through the process of creating a post-nup or a prenup, you talk about a lot of the financial stuff that a lot of people don't talk about before they get married or even during their marriage. So it really helps you to actually iron out and have these conversations around money that you should be having or you should have had prior to getting married. And it gets you on the same page as far as how you want to actually navigate your finances. Now, obviously, it's a little bit different for Jess and I, because we have these conversations all the time, but it definitely brought some things to light that we hadn't actually thought about.
Well, and one thing that I think that was really important and eye-opening for us that we talked to Aaron about is, let's say we would have done this in our 20s, right? Or if you're first getting married and it is a prenup, but maybe you're a young professional, you don't have a, bustling 401k, whatever that is. It's not necessarily about what you have right now. It's about what you are building in the process of your marriage. And so if you're thinking about your career progression, what you're able to contribute to your retirement accounts, and the money that you're making over time, that's where the significance comes in, because you're building and growing your wealth individually and together. And so you want to protect those assets.
Yeah, definitely.
So you start the process by detailing your assets and your liabilities as an individual. So I basically wrote down everything that I own. So all of my accounts, my retirement accounts, my savings, my checking, my debts, etc. Brandon did the same. And then basically a net worth statement is created from that. So that is just the baseline of, as of this date, what do you have in these accounts, and are these accounts yours? So that was very simple. This is something that we were able to put together pretty quickly. Again, these are conversations that we have all the time, numbers that we are aware of and look at all the time. And so for us, nothing came up that we weren't already aware of in either category when it comes to assets or debts. But this is something you might want to consider as you go into the process, that you will be disclosing what you have. So, if you haven't been very honest, if you've got some secret accounts, this is the time to have that conversation before you put it on paper, because it is going to come out.
In all honesty, if you have secret accounts at this point in time and like you're getting ready to get married or you're already married, I would say that there's some other issues that probably also need to be addressed. As well. So
yes, absolutely. We've always been on the record to say we believe in having separate accounts, not secret accounts. And that's something else that we talked to Aaron about, is how do we want to structure the money in our home? And that, I think, is a really interesting conversation, regardless of if you're a new couple, or you're planning your life and your marriage together, or you're established, because we go through different phases of how money comes into the home, right? So I work a corporate job, so I have a steady income. I have my 401k, my match, health insurance, etc. Brandon is a business owner, so he puts a lot of the money that he earns back into his business. I would say that no 2 months are the same. Sometimes he's onboarding multiple clients, sometimes there might be a lull. And so for us, it works well that I have a consistent income and he has a flexible income. So those are things that, we wanted to also kind of point out, because money flows differently. And so we decided to go with the inside out, right? Where you put everything into one pot and then you take out what you need for your own individual kind of spending.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Okay. I know sometimes I twist it up in my mind, but inside out, you dump it all into one pot, and then you pay your communal living bills from that, your groceries, your home expenses, etc. And then you separate out whatever if you decide on this, what you want for your individual spending money, that then goes into your own account.
Yeah. So basically the structure of that is that we have a joint checking account together, and the money that we're, making, you're getting paid on whenever you get your paycheck, it goes into the joint account. And then that's divvied up in regards to how the bills are going to be paid there and whatnot. And then you separate out like any additional spending money that you want to have for yourself.
Yeah.
So let's just say hypothetically, bills come to $5,000 for the month. Our money goes in there, but if we put in, say, $8,000, then maybe Jess takes out an additional $2,000 for her spending and everything like that, and I take out an additional $1,000 on my end.
Yeah. So you can do this. We talked about doing it based on a percentage. We talked about it based on just equal amounts. I am the higher earner, and so we also talked about me getting more spending money for myself in my personal account than Brandon. So those are those conversations that you want to start thinking about, right? Does it make sense to split things 50-50 if one partner is earning significantly more than another, right? I feel like you see things like that on different social media posts all the time. Like, why are we splitting all the bills down the middle when my partner makes 4 times as much as me? So again, we're not here to tell you what your rules should be, but these are the things that you can start thinking about as you potentially prepare for a pre or a post-nup, because it's going to be an important part of the conversation. How do you want your money to work in your household?
Also, too, is doing a deeper dive into some of the quote unquote discretional spending, which
Yeah.
are needs, but they're not the same amount spent each month. So, for example, a lot of the stuff that the kids need, like clothes and stuff of that nature, Jess buys. So, obviously, she also she makes more, but then also she needs more money for that anyways, because she's the one that's handling those transactions.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the one, replenishing the kids' clothes, buying birthday presents for when we go to parties, booking vacations. I naturally, in our relationship, am the quote unquote spender, which obviously we don't like that term because it's dumb, but I spend the money because I'm the one handling a lot of those just expenses naturally, buying things for the classroom party at the end of the year and teacher appreciation and all of those things. So it makes more sense in our household for me to have quote unquote more spending money because I spend more. I need to
You
spend
handle
more
all the
because
other
I handle it all.
things
Exactly.
that I don't do.
Exactly. One of the other things that we basically said is our retirement accounts are our own, but we will be contributing the same amount. So Brandon obviously is an entrepreneur. That doesn't mean that he can't have his own retirement accounts. I get a company match. And so whatever he puts into his retirement account percentage wise, I'm going to put into my retirement account and vice versa. And we'll decide on that on an annual basis. We just want to make sure that we are both equally contributing to retirement, regardless of the fact that I get a match and he works for himself. So that was something important that we wanted to put in there.
Well, the biggest thing there is that, God forbid something happens and we do end up getting divorced, is that that's already been established that her retirement account is hers and my retirement account is mine. That's what the post-nup was for. Because as I have said in previous episodes, I started my finance career working for Fidelity and what's called defined contribution. So your 401k plans, 403b, stuff of that nature. And what I would often see sometimes come across on calls is what's called a quadro. I can't remember off the top of my head. It's an acronym. I can't remember what it stands for at the top of my head. But basically,
It did come up in our meeting,
yeah.
though.
But basically,
Aaron
what
knew.
it is that when you don't have those post-nups or prenups in place to say, hey, if we were to separate, then your retirement account's yours and my retirement account is mine, then what happens is to say, traditionally, the man might be the one making more money. He has a larger retirement account. Say you have a wife that's a stay-at-home mom. She didn't have a retirement account. So now she's entitled to half of his.
As she should be.
I'm not disputing that, but I can tell you that when those calls come across,
Right.
if I'm talking to the person who's the owner of the account,
They're
and they're
not
having
happy.
to split theirs, they're not necessarily happy.
Yeah. No, and I get that. And that's where we wanted to come in and just say, what's yours is yours, what's mine is mine. We're not splitting it. We're also in the age, our parents are getting older, they're boomers. And so, eventually there will likely be some sort of inheritance coming. And so we also designated that your inheritance is yours and mine is mine. Now, one of the clauses that we put in, which I thought was really good, and Aaron suggested this, is that if you put money from some sort of a windfall, inheritance, big bonus, whatever it might be, into your joint account, that it needs to have a document attached that says this is now becoming joint property. And so if I get an inheritance and I put it in my account, Brandon can't say anything about that. It's my inheritance. It's already defined. Now, if I choose to use that on family vacations or home improvements or to buy him whatever I want, that's totally fine. But if I put it in our joint account, we need to have a statement notarized saying that this is now joint property. And I do think that that could help eliminate any kind of confusion of, well, when everything was good, I put down this deposit on the house or this or that.
Yeah.
and now you owe me half. No, we're not doing that, right? I mean, that's come up in my own family with a down payment on a house that was my mom's inheritance, and my parents then got divorced, and I still have to hear about it to this day. Like, I'm tired of it. I don't want to have those conversations. If I'm contributing something from a windfall, a bonus, a whatever, and it's going into our joint account, we will have a statement notarized that says this is now basically our community property. This is our joint property, and we can't bring it up later. And I think that just avoids some of those things that just come up because people are emotional about their money, and we want to avoid all of that emotional, you call it head trash, that comes with giving money when you're in a good place, but then when you're not in a good place, then you want to be pissed about it.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where nobody goes into marriage with the, preconceived notion that they're going to get divorced.
Yeah.
But the reality is that around 50% of marriages end in divorce. So the idea behind this is like any of the minutia when it comes to the splitting of money, let's get that out of the way in the beginning while we're happy with the hopes that we never need to use it.
Yeah.
But if it does come to that day, then we've already taken care of it. And even that scenario, so especially with us, like, since we do have kids, I think if you got to the point where a divorce happens, that if you could take all that stuff that could potentially lead to you guys not liking each other during the divorce process, take that off the table since it's already settled, then that could lead to a better relationship post-divorce, which obviously would be helpful when you have kids involved in the scenario. I feel as though, like, for people that get divorced when they have kids, a lot of the stuff happens during the divorce that makes things just even worse.
Yeah.
And then that leads into negative interactions between the parents when it comes to co-parenting as divorcees.
Yeah.
Divorce.
And you can't we do have almost like a clause about our children in the post-nup, and we'll talk about that momentarily, but you can't actually put any kind of custody or child support information into your post-nup. So it can only pertain to the two people that are married. It cannot contain information about any other people and or minors. But we basically put in a clause of like, here are the things that while we love each other, while we respect each other, while we're happy, we expect in the event that we do dissolve this marriage. And so we'll get into some of those things. From a high level, we put in there that we're going to have an annual money meeting where we talk about, how much have we spent? How much have we saved? What are our retirement accounts look like? It's basically like a mini State of the Union, right?
Granted,
of like our household.
Those, we'll have more than one a year, but our post-nup does have that, we at least have 1 year.
Yeah, so we'll talk about our assets, our debts, disclose any changes in income, review the previous year's spending, budgeting for the upcoming year, discussion of retirement contributions, subscriptions, reoccurring expenses, insurance policies for auto, home, health, medical, disability, identifying large expenses that are coming up, and then upcoming travel budget conversations. So those are things that we talk about anyways, but if that is not something that you're currently doing, you can put in there that at least once a year you will have designated time, and you could even put in there that you're going to sit down maybe with your financial advisor or financial coach or whomever you might be working with to make sure that that happens and you don't just keep putting it off. So I thought that was something good to have in there.
No, I agree.
The other thing that we put in is that aside from the inheritance belonging to the receiver, is that anything above $500 taken out of the joint account needs to have a discussion first. But then we also, because I said, listen, if I'm at Costco shopping for the annual family barbecue, I'm going to spend more than $500. I don't need to stand in line to call Brandon to make sure that I can buy these burgers and hot dogs. So we put in there that is aside from
it's like
the general household expenses.
It's also like a single item. Like
right.
You're going to buy one item itself that costs $500 or more. As compared to like, you went shopping.
We went grocery shopping or
you had to buy multiple items.
Yeah. But again, if you're not used to maybe sharing the expenses, looking at the accounts together, you don't want large amounts of money. Whatever large is to you, you don't want large amounts of money coming out and then somebody goes to swipe a card and then you're surprised because, there's thousands of dollars missing. So we just put that little clause in there. That way we're encouraged to have those conversations. And if one of us wanted to spend $500 or more out of the joint account, we would just either send a quick text message or pick up the phone and have a quick conversation and then decide how to move forward from there. One thing that was interesting that came up for North Carolina, because we put in there that we are not going to, in the event of us dissolving our marriage, we are not going to pay each other alimony. I've said that from the very beginning. I'm like, I'm not paying a grown man. It's just not going to happen. So, but the state of North Carolina does not actually allow that to be in a post-nup. And so we have a clause in there that states that we are taking our own financial responsibilities and that we have enough assets and means to cover our own expenses outside of alimony. So we would hope that that would pass in a court of law. It's not something that I think we're super concerned about, but legally we could not add the statement in North Carolina. So something to keep in mind.
Yeah, essentially the clause was to provide context of what our wishes were at the time that we did the
Yes.
post-nup. So like she said, hopefully if it ever came to that point of a divorce, then the court would be like, this is what you were talking about. This is what you wanted this time. You might be angry now and want something different, but this is what you wanted.
Right. One thing that I think, as I've talked to some people about this, I really was more interested in the logistics of like what happens if we were to split up, right? Because we do have children. We do want to, of course, be happy co-parents. We want to
We own a home.
We own a home. We want to minimize the amount of disruption they have in their life. And so we talked a lot about, well, who moves out? What does that look like? How much time do you get to move out? Let's say we dissolve our marriage. I mean, Brandon probably can't go out within the next week and like find another apartment, right? So how much time does he have or do I have to move out?
Like what's a reasonable time?
We decided Brandon's moving out.
Yeah,
That's in the post-nup. Yeah. So Brandon, according to our post-nup, has 60 days to find a new residence.
And also, just to be clear to those people out there, like, for our situation, I don't speak to everybody else's situation. For our situation, I put in the post-nup that I would move out because that was my choice. That I think from a structure standpoint, to keep things as normal as possible for the kids, I think as a father, if you can try to do as best as you can to quote unquote be 50-50 with a mom, but the reality is that majority of the time that's not the case. Right. So I wanted them to be there stability wise with her more initially if we went through that process of transitioning.
Yeah. So Brandon has 60 days to move out and another 30 days after that to remove all of his things from the house. Let's be serious. Brandon has a laptop and some clothes. Like, that's all he's getting.
I have not, like, so everything in our house from a design standpoint, I have not put any input. I shouldn't say that. I wouldn't say I haven't put any input in.
I've always asked you.
She always asked me,
yes.
but I'm not good at that. So I'm like, whatever you want. If I have something where like, I'm like, adamantly like, no, I do not want that. She's like, okay, you don't have a lot of opinion, so I'm going to listen to you on that one. But 99.9% of the stuff she's done, so like it wouldn't necessarily be anything for me to take. However, we did put in there like a reasonable amount of our joint assets would be given to me to purchase furniture for a new place.
Yes, so Brandon gets a $5,000 allowance. Again, my concern at this point, if we were to get a divorce, is not Brandon. But if our children are going to be with Brandon in whatever new living situation he's going to be in, I want them to have a home with Brandon. So we did put a clause in that you get to take $5,000 from the joint account to furnish your new place. Yeah. So in my head, I was like, listen, I don't need this man on Facebook Marketplace buying some old rank mattress. No, like,
I don't buy things on Facebook Marketplace.
I'm just saying, again, this is like, we're happy and then now we're not. So I'm thinking about my children, our children in this event of, no, they're used to sleeping in their own nice beds with nice bedding. And I mean, they're spoiled, right? Like, we have a great life. So we need to maintain that. And so I didn't want to do who gets this bed and who gets this sofa and what about this table? And no, just go to Rooms to Go,
start anew.
Furnish your place, get the kids what they need. Here's money from the joint account. And so those are the things that I'm really glad we talked about. We talked about them with Aaron. We said, well, what do people do? What is in your prenup? What's in your postnup? We talked about these scenarios. And now that it's outlined, I feel great. Yeah. Like, again, we don't ever plan on using this, but in the event that we did, it's already written out for us. We don't have to now be pissed and angry and exhausted with each other, and figuring out, well, when are you going to get your stuff out and how much time do you have? And, well, no, I don't want you taking money from the account. It's already decided.
Yeah.
We decided on it while we're in love, while we respect each other, while we're good.
It's also like any planning that might be seen as like, quote unquote, a negative situation. You do the planning when the situation is not occurring. And it makes it
Yeah.
so much easier so that if that situation does occur, you already have the plan in place. I mean, it's like,
Already in place.
what's it like for like a business, like crisis planning?
Yeah. Yeah. And like succession planning, right? Like, I mean, that's
I mean, like,
important.
you think about anything. Like, I mean, even just like think about from like a standpoint of like, you know, first responders, stuff like that. They're
You
running
plan
through
for
this
the
stuff.
worst.
They're running through this stuff and practicing when it's quote unquote not real.
Right.
So that when it is real, they know what to do.
Yeah.
So this wasn't a morbid conversation. It wasn't anything that we got emotional about because, like I said, we're planning for something that we hopefully never have to use.
I mean, I think we're probably the exception here, but we probably nerded out about it because I loved this conversation. I loved this detail of like, what happens? How much time do you have? How much time do we have to separate our bank accounts? How much money do you get to furnish your new apartment? Like, I loved that because now we know and we don't have to talk about it again.
It also kind of like trying to think of like how I want to phrase this, but it also opens you up to understand the conversations on certain topics that maybe you haven't had before and what your partner's thinking is.
Yeah. I mean, was there anything that we weren't aligned on though?
No, like, we're the exception, I would say, though, because we have
Yeah.
these conversations all the time. Because, like, in all honesty, I think out of all the financial conversations we ever had, the only one where we were slightly not aligned with initially, but then we're kind of on the same
Was the
page
student loans for the kids.
was college, paying for our kids' college.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty much it.
Oh, that's something else that we talked about, right? Of like, we don't know, let's say we did get a divorce in 10, 15, 20 years. We don't know what our financial standing is going to be, what we're going to be earning. So we did talk about things like, well, can we split, you know, things with our minor children 50-50? So like, what if we are getting them cell phones and cars, and what about prom and senior trips? And so we talked about those things, and Aaron again made very valid points and gave us his professional, expertise on not putting in the post-nup that everything would be split 50-50, right? Because then you can run into areas where maybe while you create the post-nup, that makes sense, but then life happens and now it's not feasible for one parent to still maintain a 50-50 split when it comes to buying a car, things like that. And so we basically put in there that we will share the responsibilities as equally as possible for anything above and beyond child support. So if there were, I mean, our minor children would still be involved. If we were to get a divorce, child support would obviously be handled in family court. And so these were for expenses above and beyond, right? Oh, you want to take our kids to the Bahamas now for their birthday? Is that a reasonable expense, or do you need to cover that yourself?
Well, technically, child support only technically comes into play if you decide to take the other parent to child support for child support.
Which we would hopefully not do.
Yeah, so like you can manage the expenses before that if you are on good terms.
Yeah.
And handle it that way also.
I think the really good thing here, and we even put in, again, you can't actually add your children to the post-nup or the prenup, but you can put statements in of, here is what we agreed upon as part of this process. So something else we agreed upon is that neither parent would live more than 30 miles away, right? I think neither one of us would even want to do that. So that seems easy enough. I think we also added in there that we would do a week on and a week off. I was very adamant about that.
Inner week changing.
We're not doing a midweek change. I'm not doing a Tuesday, Wednesday. I'm not doing it. You get the kids for a week. I get the kids for a week. You get a chance to miss them. No, of course, we don't want to be apart from our kids for a week. But I see in that work life how difficult it is, especially if you travel for work, which I do, how hard it is to like manage one Tuesday here, one Friday there. It's a nightmare, and it's exhausting for the kids. I was a former teacher. I knew exactly when students were with one parent versus another parent. It's a disaster. Like, I'm just not doing it. So we put in there that we are agreeing to 1 full week on, 1 full week off. We didn't put anything in there about holidays, but again, our goal with all of this is to remain excellent parents to our children. And so those are the details that we would, of course, work out, on the back end. But those core kind of day-to-day living, not moving the children from their base school, things like that were really important to us because we want to maintain the quality of life that they have and not let our relationship be a burden to them. So that's really what we were trying to maintain as much as possible.
Yeah, and like specifically like for myself, my parents got divorced when I was 5. So, my brother and I grew up being raised by my mom. So like that thought process of what I experienced as a kid went into, the conversations that we had for the post-nup because like you said, the 30-mile radius was so that we could both be present in the kids' lives and without having to uproot them per se. So like they could stay at the same, like, so for example, 1 week with her, 1 week with me, they're still at the same school. They're still able to do all the same activities and everything like that. So that's one of the main reasons that we put that in. Cause also, like I said, I don't even think Jess had to bring that up. Like that was one of my things where like, we need to be in close proximity because God forbid that happens that we got divorced. I need to be there.
Yeah. Well, and you don't want them to then have to change schools and teachers and, like you said, extracurriculars and all those things that are in your community, they happen within a certain radius. And so we just wanted to maintain that as much as possible. Yeah. There's also some other clauses that we put in, counseling clauses, mediation, and then family counseling. So counseling is for Brandon and myself. Either one of us could initiate a request to go to counseling at any time throughout the year. And the idea there is that within 30 days, your first session needs to be scheduled. And you have to have 3 sessions within a 90-day window. And what I thought was also great, and this is something that came from Aaron, is whoever initiates the request for counseling has to present 3 counselors that are already insurance approved to the other person. And then the other person gets to decide, based on the bios or profiles, who they would want to go with as far as a therapist, so that there's not, well, you chose this person, they're clearly on your side.
You're both part of the process.
You're both part of the process. And then there's also, as part of that, you can extend a request. So let's say you go to 3 counseling sessions, it's going well, and one person says, hey, I would like to continue. Then the other person, can respond accordingly, but there's a minimum of 3. If we decided to, after those counseling sessions, go through with the divorce, then we have to go to mediation, and that can include the children. So this is where you figure out some of those remaining details that are not already in the post-nup, which again, I thought was great because we're trying to raise happy, healthy children, emotionally healthy children. And so we wanted to bring them into that process as well. And then we also have a family counseling clause where we allow the children to be part of the therapy process so that they can work out, anything that they need to with us or by themselves so that, again, they're getting the support that they need. So all in all, a counseling clause, a mediation clause, and then family counseling as well.
Yeah, that's important too, because
Definitely.
Obviously talking about mental health on all levels is much more of a, talked about subject matter now where, my parents got divorced in 1988. So it wasn't really a big thing. And I think that myself and my brother definitely probably could have benefited.
Definitely could
have benefited from some form of, counseling at that time to help get through that period.
Yeah. Yeah. We just want to give our kids the resources that we think they might need during a transition like that. One of the other things that came up is if we actually decided to go through with the full divorce, that we should also go into binding arbitration following mediation. And there were a couple of benefits for arbitration that we didn't realize, but it offers several advantages over the traditional court litigation, including speed, cost effectiveness, flexibility, and then Aaron's big point was confidentiality. Yeah. So, regardless of whether you have a platform or a podcast or, you're in the public eye, et cetera, if you don't want all your business out on the street and you don't want somebody that can just pop into the court hearings, because technically you can do that, you need to have an arbitration clause in your post-nup or your prenup. So I thought that was really great. Aaron says he recommends it to all of his clients. Definitely, of course, the high net worth individuals, celebrities that he represents, etc. But he did say because we have a quote unquote public presence, that he would recommend that for us as well. Because otherwise, if people catch wind, they could just be sitting up in that courtroom taking notes, and then you end up, on the shade room.
Everything's out there.
That's what happens. So I thought that was really interesting, and that's certainly not something we knew about and or would have known about without Aaron's guidance and expertise.
Yeah.
On top of that, I think what's really important here is you're making your own rules, right? So come prepared with the things that are important to you, that are top of mind. I mean, there was even like, hey, what about my points and miles, right? I'm the one who's strategically we're using this credit card.
She's the one doing it all.
I'm the one doing it all. So like, if this doesn't work, I want to keep all my points and miles.
I think that's fair.
But the point is, ask whatever it is that is important to you, right? And have a conversation with your partner to determine how you want this to go. I mean, yes, you can talk about your kids and you can have clauses in there. One of the other things that we talked about is like, how do you introduce a new person, right? Let's say Brandon moves out and moves in with a buddy, right? Okay, well, I need to be comfortable with that, first of all, because now my kids are living with somebody that I might not know. But also, what happens if, the divorce is final and he starts dating or I start dating? What is the rule for introducing somebody new? We also talked about things like our aging parents. How do we handle an aging parent moving in, whether it's temporary or permanent? What does that look like from a financial point of view, right? So one thing we've, for example, said is if we needed an aging parent to move in with us, is we will be exhausting their health insurance and retirement benefits because we don't want to take on the financial strain of now having an elderly adult in our home and us taking over all of their financial burdens. That's not going to be good for anybody, especially not our relationship.
Yeah, and that comes from we know people who unfortunately maybe didn't have this conversation beforehand, and then a parent moved in, and that's parent maybe isn't contributing, as they maybe should to household expenses. So that starts to stress your expenses. Because now you're paying for another person being there.
Yeah. No thanks. So those are all the things, we're just kind of taking the experiences of the people around us, the conversations that we're already having, and the things that are important to us. And we shaped that into the rules, kind of, quote unquote, for our love insurance. And I feel great. I mean, it's something we could always go back and revisit. I mean, it is a document that you can make updates to, but I feel like we're in a really good place. We put in there what is most important to us for right now. And I think the basics are covered, right? Like the no alimony was important to me. Keeping our retirements accounts separate was important to me. Making sure that your debt is yours, which you don't really have debt besides your car. And then I have more debt because of my student loans.
Oh, one other point we talked about is that the mortgage is in Jess's name.
Oh,
but in our post-nup, we put that is still a joint debt.
Asset. Yes. Well, it's an asset and a liability. Yes, it shows up on both. So Brandon is on the deed, but the mortgage is solely in my name. But if we were to dissolve our marriage,
I am just as much responsible
for the mortgage. Yeah. So there's like a first right of refusal. If, let's say, I wanted to sell the house, but Brandon wanted to keep it, well, then he can buy out his portion, for example. Or we sell it and everything that goes into selling the house and what we make from the house gets split. So even though he's not technically on the mortgage, we did define it as a joint asset. So you can do that with, any properties or other assets that you have and determine, regardless of who's on the actual loan, who would be responsible, or is it a shared responsibility? So great call out. So all that to say, you get to make your own rules. That's what this was all about for us in the beginning. And I'm so glad that we did it. Hopefully we'll never have to use it. But as far as, helping educate people on the process, obviously for the podcast, but then also we really now do consider it part of a comprehensive financial portfolio. So I feel great about it.
I mean, and we've told all our friends that, they should really think about looking into doing that. And honestly, one of the biggest takeaways that I took from it is that there are so many things that can happen in a marriage that lead to divorce. And one of the top ones is financial stress. So if you could take away any of those potential areas that could lead to divorce, then that just sets you up for a higher probability of having a successful marriage. So if you
Yeah.
take that financial stress aspect off of the table by having these conversations, having certain things in place, that leaves, less things to have to worry about, and, can't predict the future, but I think that puts you in a much better place to stay married and stay in a happy marriage. Because there are a lot of people out there that are probably married and not happy, but the idea is to stay in a happy marriage.
Yeah. I feel great about it. I'm glad we did it. No regrets. And,
And I highly recommend using Aaron Thomas. Like, process was so easy.
so easy.
Can't
His
say enough
team
about
was
that.
great. Communication, easy scheduling.
And he works with, individuals in several states. So he's located in Georgia, but he works, like I said, we're in North Carolina. He works with people in several other states.
Yeah. So reach out to Aaron. We have an affiliate link just for tracking purposes, so that if you hear about Aaron on
Yeah,
the
we're
podcast,
not getting any money from it.
Yeah, if you hear about Aaron from our podcast, he wants to know, and he's a really great resource. He shed a lot of light on the process, things that we should consider, things how they're standard, how they're done kind of in a standard way. If we asked about non-standard things, what that would be, how we should phrase them, etc. So absolutely great experience, and I'm so glad we now have this done and checked off the list.
Yeah.
So if you have any other questions about our specific post-nuptial agreement, feel free to reach out. We're pretty much an open book. There are a couple of clauses in there that state that we can't talk about certain things. But for the most part, we have shared everything that is in our post-nup, and we hope that this was a helpful episode for you.
Sugar Daddy Podcast, yo. Learn how to make them pockets